Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Nancy for hosting this information session tonight. My name is Erica Gustafson. I'm the Managing Director of Quest Travel Adventures, and we specialize in the Atlantic Islands group. So right now, tonight, we're going to be talking about the Azores and Madeira, which are both Portuguese islands. We also do trips to the Spanish Canary Islands and to Cabo Verde. So here we begin. This is meant to be kind of a bit of a conversation. So if you guys have questions as I'm going, or if I'm talking too fast, want me to elaborate, please feel free to jump in. So first, a little update on the tourism and health situation in Portugal. In response to the pandemic and to start putting some higher standards in place to make visitors feel safe once we're able to travel again to mainland Portugal, the Azores and Madeira, the Portuguese government established the Clean and Safe Seal of Approval, which you see right here. This is for accommodations, tour companies, restaurants, any other tourist-related business. And this means that they have met the new higher standards of hygiene and cleanliness set out by this program. So you'll see this seal on websites if you're researching trip. And then when you visit, they'll be posted in the facilities. This just means that they have cleaned more often, they've sanitized, they're doing all the standards that kind of bring everything to a new level and make things cleaner. Since early in the lockdown, the Azores and Madeira has taken really strict precautions to protect their citizens. There is a large group of Portuguese retirees that live in both the Azores and Madeira, since it's such a good life there in the Atlantic Ocean. So all travelers since the beginning of lockdown really have been required to show a negative PCR test upon arrival, and then they have to get tested again after being in the destination for 6 days. Because of some of these strict measures, these islands have some of the lowest cases of COVID in Europe. As of today, the Azores have 95 active cases across their 9 islands, and Madeira has 31. These numbers are posted daily on their government websites. So this is something that we've been monitoring the whole time and that you as a client can take a look at. Like here in the US, Portugal started their vaccination program at the end of December. They're going a little slower there, as you may have seen in the news and media, but they recently reported that they vaccinated their 1 millionth person. So they're at about 1/11 of their population right now. The Portuguese islands of Madeira and the Azores were recently voted Europe's safest destination by the European Best Destination Council because of their low numbers. So this is exciting for us. And as Nancy revealed, the Azores and Madeira are doing kind of what we call a soft opening. It's not a major announcement, but they are now open to US travelers. They are only accepting travelers on the nonstop flight from the US out of Boston. So you can't yet connect through mainland Portugal because mainland Portugal is not open. But with a negative PCR test and filling out, they have a health form that you have to fill out so that they know kind of where you've been, where you're going. You can visit both these destinations. So we're going to start with the Azores. As Nancy mentioned, she traveled there with a small group in the summer of 2019. There are a couple of her photos scattered in this presentation, and then I'll let her share a bit more about her experience with you guys as well. The nonstop flights are from Boston. They take about 4.5 to 5 hours, and they fly into the main island of São Miguel.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I'm still seeing the first slide. I don't know what everybody else is seeing. Are we still? Is it my side or your side?
No, I am too. I'm only seeing the first
Sorry.
side. There we go.
Okay, that's better.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
Whoops. I'll go back real quick. This is just the Clean and Safe logo. It's a beautiful picture, so it's worth looking at. Okay. Moving right along. Glad we fixed that. Portuguese archipelago, the Portuguese Azores archipelago has 9 islands in total. The official language is Portuguese, although English is spoken throughout the islands. The official currency is the euro. They are located about 900 miles due west of Lisbon. And the flight, like I said, from Boston is about 4.5, 5 hours. It's a little bit longer going back to the United States because of the winds. There are 2 international airports on the main islands of São Miguel and Terceira. And these flights from Boston on Azores Airlines are year-round. They operate a little bit less in the winter season than they do in the summer, but there are also multiple daily flights from mainland Portugal and most other European gateways. So if you're flying through London or Paris, those are other options. Just to give you guys a scale of the islands themselves and getting around, I'm gonna flip screens here. From the furthest western group to the furthest eastern group, it's about 375 miles. So even though on the map they look really tiny, they're actually really far spread apart. So we group these islands into 3 sections. The central and the south group are visited the most. You see São Miguel all the way on the right-hand side of the screen. That is the most touristed island. And then in the central, Terceira, Faial, Pico. Whereas if you go all the way to the west, Corvo and Flores, those are the most rugged. They have the most diverse weather change. They're really recommended for summer travel only, and they have very limited accommodations. So if you really want to get off the beaten path, that's where you want to go. If you're an avid bird watcher, it's a great place to go as you see a lot of migrating birds. You will experience these on the other islands as well, but that's where it's highlighted.
Yeah,
then,
Erica,
yes.
One thing I learned when I was there, I mean, I call myself a closet birder, but that the migrants stop at the furthest east islands in one direction, and then on the way back, they stop on the western islands, or vice versa. I'm not sure what it is, but if you are at all interested in birding, there's just some fantastic opportunities in May and then again in the fall. I'm not sure the exact dates, but if you're interested, just let me know and we'll figure that out. Okay.
The other thing about birding is that on São Miguel Island, they have the very rare Azorean finch. So far of all my passengers that I've sent there, I've only had one say that they were able to see an Azorean finch, but the guides are always on the lookout because that's something really unique to the destination. They don't migrate, they live there all the time. So yeah, so you can kind of see how spread out they are. And then the last thing to point out is the very easternmost island of Santa Maria is really the only island that has a golden sand beach. These islands were volcanically formed, so the few beaches that are scattered around the other islands are usually a gray or a dark sand because they have volcanic sands mixed in. Santa Maria does have a long golden beach. However, due to development restrictions, there's no hotel on the beach or even kind of near the beach. So you stay in one of the little villages and then you can spend the day on the beach. So just to give you kind of a big, beautiful picture of the Azores, and you take a look at the coastline here, it's a destination of natural beauty. It is an outdoor destination. It's a place where people go to, quote, stop and smell the flowers. The Portuguese, as I mentioned before, a lot of them retire here because it's a very relaxed pace of life. I tell my clients all the time, you're gonna get off the plane, take a deep breath, and everything slows down a little bit. The weather is similar to that of North Carolina, but there's no chance of snow because of the Mediterranean winds. The coldest it really gets when it gets frigid there, it's probably about 40 degrees. And that would be in the month of January is their coldest month. To us who live here in the Northeast, 40 degrees is almost like sweatshirt weather. So it is a year-round destination. The island has 2 golf courses. So for golfers, if you want to go golfing in January, February, while it is a little bit cooler, there's no snow on the courses and they're open. They do get 4 seasons. Winter time, like I said, is really December, January, February. You've got spring when everything starts getting really green and starting to bloom. Summer, you'll see the highs in the mid 80s, and that is when it's the most popular travel destination for the Portuguese. So you'll get, especially in August when they all take their vacation, you'll get a lot of mainland Portuguese. You'll even get a lot from the Portuguese communities here in the Northeast that go there on vacation. So this photo shows the coastline. You can see there are no beaches along the coastline. It is volcanically formed. And this is not the destination for the beach lovers. You can't sit with your pina colada on the beach here. But there are tons of activities, tons of just like relaxing things to do. Which brings me to the Terra Nostra Garden and the geothermal hot springs. There are 5 different hot springs on the island of San Miguel. These are natural geothermal hot springs. The water, as you see here, it's a brownish orange color, and that's due to the high iron content. It's not muddy. So when you go in the water, you're not gonna get mud on you. And this is probably one of the most popular activities when you go to the Azores, is to sit in one of the hot springs. This photo specifically shows the Terra Nostra Gardens. They kind of originated in the Northeast. A wealthy merchant from Boston became the honorary consul to the Azores in the late 18th century, built that house on the grounds, created the botanical garden, which is 24 acres around the house, opened the hot springs to the public, and it's been open ever since. The hot springs are open year round. So soaking in the water for the locals is said to have essential minerals. It restores your energy. It heals your skin. The temperature is usually between 95 and 105 degrees. And then a lot of this, we combine a tour of the garden so you can kind of walk around and explore with a dip in the hot springs. If any of you have ever been to Iceland or have heard of the Blue Lagoon, packages to the Blue Lagoon can start at like 60 or 70 euros to get in there. It's a bit more romantic because that aqua blue color. But what's really cool about the hot springs in the Azores is it costs 8 euros to go into the botanical gardens, which includes unlimited time in the geothermal hot springs. We recommend that you don't wear a white bathing suit and that you rent one of their towels, which costs only 2 euros, because the iron content, that brown orange, does leave a little bit of a residue. It will turn your white bathing suit a little bit of tan, and it leaves a residue on the towel. So that's why we say rent one, don't bring your own. So these are some of Nancy's pictures, and I'm just gonna let you jump in here, Nancy, and tell us a little bit about your experience in Furnas town and the geothermal hot springs.
Well, yeah, I think that was the second day that we were in the Azores, and we went on an amazing walk around the acreage there at the Terra Nostra Park. The picture on the right is from there with the trumpet flowers. It was a foggy morning, but I think the first thing we did, we visited where they dig under the lava rocks and put our lunch in these cast iron pots down under the earth, and then we went and soaked in the hot tub or the hot springs, and then after lunch we came back and had this delicious meal that you see there in the middle of the picture. It's probably like an Azorean crock pot, natural crock pot.
So the meal is called cozido,
right?
And it is cooked in like a big pot in the ground
under
they
piles of lava.
The heat.
Yeah.
I call it like an Azorean boiled dinner, Irish boiled dinner, because there's a ton of vegetables, as you can see there, lots of different kinds of meat. For me, it was the first time that I had a yam and a sweet potato on my plate at the same time, 2 different vegetables. Mind-blowing, because usually here in the US you get one or the other and they called the same thing. So both of those grow locally in the Azores, and actually the yams grow in the botanical garden, in Terra Nostra Garden. So all of this is sourced locally, which is why food on this island is such a great pleasure for the Portuguese people and the Azorean people, and why it's so much fun as a tourist to come and eat these foods. These are all local foods.
It was delicious. Just we had our fill, that's for sure.
And it's also, you know, if you're not a meat eater, there's so many different vegetables, and it's usually served with rice, so it's really easy for the vegetarian clients as well. They do cook the meat and the vegetables separately, just so that if you are a vegetarian, you're not eating the meat portion. I just want to highlight Nancy's picture here at the top. Is of the Furnas Valley and Furnas town in the background there. And basically the mountains that you see around is the kind of old volcanic caldera, and then the town was settled in the middle. So you'll see this a couple times in some of the pictures of the Azores where you see mountains around the town, because it's the old calderas from where the volcanic activity used to take place.
And there are hiking trails along those ridges. Is that true?
That is correct. Not as much in Furnas as there are, which I'll get to in the couple slides, in the Sete Cidades on the western side. So this is on the eastern side of the island. The other really popular thing to do in Furnas is, this is Furnas Lake. This is a great place for kayaking, canoeing, or there's a walk that goes all the way around the circumference. This is actually where Nancy went, where she could see the pots of food being put into the ground. Because the lake is inside a long extinct volcanic crater, it's actually really deep in the center. And there's a facility, University of California facility along the lake that studies the lake, the cosmic activity underneath it, as well as the birds. This is a huge migration spot for the birds. And I think what surprised me the most is, as I paddled out to the middle, and then the guide said, be really, really quiet. And I stopped to listen, and it was so loud. There were so many birds screaming at each other that when you're talking, you don't notice, but as soon as you're quiet, you're like, wow, the natural habitats is just crazy loud. So another great activity in actually both the Azores and in Madeira Island are whale and dolphin watching, because of the locations in the middle of the Atlantic island. Not only do birds migrate, but the whales migrate. So depending on time of the year, you can see blue whales, sperm whales, pilot whales. And they say that they see a whale about 350 days of the year. The bottlenose dolphins have taken up habitat in and around the islands. So you basically can see dolphins often from the shore. They do tend to do some of these whale watching trips in smaller boats, sometimes even in zodiacs, which is different than if you live up here in the Northeast and you're going out on those big whale watching boats. So this picture is real. Like, these people really got that close. Now, sometimes you always have a marine biologist on the boat with you, and if they see that the dolphins are a little bit aggravated, they'll back up and give them space. That happens sometimes if there are babies within the pond.
And I will say we did that the last day, and it was rough that day, and it was more like we didn't have to pay extra for the bouncy ride out to get to where the whales were, and it was like seated on these. It's unlike any other boat ride I'd ever been to, because you had a handle that you had to hold on to, and you're straddled across almost like a horse thing. And we bounced our way out there to see what I was really excited to see was the sperm whales, because we don't have those here, or I don't recall ever seeing one here in New England. So that was pretty much worth it.
The last time I was there and went out, we did go out on a small, it looked like a small dinghy or a tugboat kind of thing. There were about 10 of us on the boat. So I've been out on the Zodiacs like you just described as well. But what was unique about the last time I was there is that they actually saw a little bit of floating trash. And when they went over to investigate, there was a little bit of trash, but there was also a loggerhead turtle. And there's a really neat study going on between the biologists in the Azores and the biologists from the University of Florida that are studying the migration patterns of the loggerhead turtles. And so we went up to the turtle, they picked it up, and it was not happy about this, but it also had a little bit of trash stuck to it. So we took that off, and they were able to read the tag that it had on it and log the tag so that that could go into the system and we could see where that turtle had come from. A little bit later on, we also got to see a baby Portuguese man of war, which I've also never seen before. And that is what the loggerhead turtles eat. So that is why they were probably so close in proximity to each other. But those were other treats, because going on a whale and dolphin watching, I did not expect to see a logger turtle or a Portuguese man of war. But because you have a biologist on the boat with you, and because these are small groups, there are experiences that you don't realize you're going to have that just kind of happen. This is actually what you, Nancy, were probably talking about before. The view in the background here, this is called Sete Cidades Parish. It's actually one of the most photographed places in the Azores, because as you can see around the entire caldera in the front there, and then over on the other side, you can see the Atlantic Ocean. This parish represents one of the largest, it is the largest parish on San Miguel Island, even though it's the smallest population, just like size versus people who have settled in the town. The lake that you can see in the distance is actually half blue and half green, and that's because of the algae. So it's also really cool when you get up close and you're like, wait a minute, there's two different colored lakes here. And then the trails that you can see in the background here are for hiking or biking, walking, just kind of exploring. And they have, depending on how active you want to be, there are shorter hikes, longer hikes, and some biking. And then down in the corner there, you see Nancy and her group doing a little walking along the coastline, because there's also a variety of walks, whether you're going coastline, whether you're going to the highest point on the island, whether you're walking to a waterfall, walking around the top of a caldera. Lots going on. And who would have thought that the Azores are a hotspot for your tea lovers? In the age of exploration, Chinese settlers came through the Azores, cultivated the land, and by the early 1800s, they were growing lots and lots of tea. There are 2 current plantations in the Azores that are still open to this day. Chagorena here, which is the most popular one to visit, still uses some of the old traditional style equipment. You could stop in, tour around a little bit, taste the tea, which I assume you guys are doing here, and experience what tea growing is like. This is the oldest tea plantation in Europe. And as you can kind of see in these pictures, the tea kind of is grown down and falls into the ocean. And kind of going back to the cozido style cooking, the tea, Azores is your destination for foodie lovers. Food in the Azores is a highlight of people's trips. Some people specifically go there to eat. The really neat thing is it's not expensive. Most of the produce is grown locally. There's obviously lots of seafood coming out of the ocean. Cattle is raised on the island, both for beef and for dairy production. Cheese, as you see here, is one of the prominent exports of the Azores. While the Azores themselves represent only 3% of Portugal's population, the Azores produce over 50% of the cheese consumed in the country. Cheese making has been a part of Azorean life since the early 1500s. They produce over 2 different varieties of cheese, and many of them are really specialized to the island. So in this picture, you see the São Jorge cheese, which is made out of the São Jorge. It's a little softer, harder rind on the outside. And each island has their own specialty, but each island will make a lot of different kinds. This is the one destination I've ever gone to where almost every night for dessert, I chose to have cheese. Because there's...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say that one afternoon we took a tour with Hungry Whales cultural and food tours, and went to the local market and got to taste a lot of different local specialties, and buy the tea and the honey and the cheeses. And the guy was Raphael, if I recall, and he was just a wealth of information. And we didn't leave hungry, although we did have dinner later. Anyway.
We do partner with a really great kind of food explorer there, Raphael, as Nancy said, who does daily walks through the market, doing little food tastings, does evenings wine and cheese pairings, as well as what they call bites and something, which just has different appetizers and aperitifs. So a lot going on there for the foodie. And if you don't want to have cheese for dinner and you want something sweeter, the #1 export in the Azores is pineapples. Who knew? Over 2 million pineapples are exported from the Azores Islands each year. There are 2 large plantations on the island that you can tour if you want to while visiting. They use the pineapples also to produce a pineapple liqueur that you can taste on the island. Lots of pineapple upside down cakes and pineapple infused puddings and pineapple everything. So that is a great export if you're a pineapple fan.
Plus the climate is a little cool to grow the pineapples outside. And so they're all grown in these temperature regulated greenhouses, which I thought was pretty fascinating as well. So
pineapples were not originally on the island. They were actually introduced after a big blight hit their oranges. This used to be a citrus island, and I think back in the late 1800s, a blight came through, destroyed all the orange trees, and they tried to come up with a different produce export that wasn't oranges, and some of them were some of the citrus family was too close to oranges that they would have also been infected by the insecticide that was used to try to get rid of it. But pineapples have a completely different makeup, so they started growing them, and it became a wild success.
They're a little bit smaller, and they don't have the huge topping like the ones we see in our grocery stores. It's much shorter, greenery on top, but they're very delicious.
I'm going to move islands right now, so we're going to hop over to Terceira Island, which is the second biggest island in the group. It's in the central group that we saw on that map, and it is the kind of cultural center of the Azores. The capital town of Terceira was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site because this is where Azorean life first started. As ships set off to the west from Europe, they would stop to refuel, and Angra became the first settled town, and it's considered a regional capital. It has the government of the Azores, and it's the location of the Azorean bishop. It's a really great representation of the white houses with the basalt rock and the ceramic roofs, which is a very typical look coming out of the Azores. Terceira has its own flavor. Each island has a nickname. So São Miguel that we were just on is called the Green Island. Terceira is actually called the Lilac Island. And there's 2 reasons for this that the locals will tell you. One is because they actually grow a good amount of lilacs on the island and purple flowers. The other is because there's a lot of natural lava flow on the island that you see here that you don't actually see on the island of São Miguel. And it's said that as the sun sets, the lava flow turns purple. So Terceira is one of the few places in the entire world where you can explore underground lava tubes. In the upper left here, you can see a picture of the Algar do Cavo lava tubes. These were formed about 3,000 years ago when there was a great eruption, and as the lava flow hardened, giant air bubbles were created, and the lava hardened around the air bubbles. The caves, which finally were opened, they run about 300 feet. It's only open the kind of front bit to the public, but there are stairs and walkways that go down and in that you can explore the underground lava caves. The topography of Terceira is said to look like an agricultural patchwork quilt. There are beautiful lookout points, like here shown in the bottom left, the Sierra de Cum Vista. You're said as you look around the patchwork quilt, you'll see places where lava flow kind of came down, hardened, and they've just built the patchwork quilt around it. Also pictured here are the natural lava formed saltwater bathing pools, and they're found in a few places around the island where you can kind of, while there's not a whole lot of beaches, you can dip into the ocean with all these natural water formations around you. We're gonna switch islands again.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say about Terceira, our group, due to a schedule change and flight, and Erica helped me with this, we were going to either have to go all the way back to Lisbon or instead have I don't know, what was it, like a 10-hour layover, Erica?
Yep.
Because the flight had changed from nonstop from San Miguel to Boston. So we took an early morning flight to Terceira and then had a guide meet us at the airport, and he was wonderfully friendly and kept telling us that that Terceira was the friendlier island of the two. And he knew we had been in San Miguel, but that they have other people, and they say that the Terceirians are the lazy people, but he said that's not true. They just know how to have more fun than the others. So it was really fun to see him. And I don't remember his name. Maybe you do, Erica, but he was very, very sweet and proud of his cultural heritage of Terceira.
Yeah, the Azorean people are very, very proud of where they live. I often say they're Azorean first and Portuguese second, because if you ask them, oh, you're Portuguese, no, I'm from the Azores. Yeah. And it's because it's a source of pride. And each one of them, depending on where their heritage is from, will tell you that their island is the best. And like I said, each island has kind of a unique feel to it. And when you do island hopping, you're going to know you're in a different place. Even though you're still in the Azores, you're in a very different place.
And can you mention the festivals that they have on Terceira?
Sure. Yeah. So the most popular festival on Terceira Island is called the San Joanes Music Festival. St. John's Day, which it's based around, is the 24th of June. So the festival will run 10 days over the 24th of June. Music, local bands brought in from other places in Portugal and around the world will play literally like almost 24 hours a day. Some of the concert start times are like 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's parades, and the city of Angra do Herismo, the UNESCO city that you saw there, just is completely decorated. And it's an incredible concert that attracts people from all over the world because it's music based. Portugal is also a very Catholic country. So they have a big Espírito Santo festival, which will happen approximately 7 weeks after Easter. And that's another really interesting, even if you're not religious, it's very beautiful to see their religious icons parade through the streets.
Do you know if they're planning to have those, or did they have them last year? Probably not, but.
They did not have them last year. And actually they haven't officially canceled them for this year, but rumor on the street is they are being canceled. Just because we want to avoid large groups of people.
Thanks.
No problem. Moving on to Fayal Island, which is probably the third most visited, also in the central group. Fayal Island, the marina in Fayal Island in the town of Horta is the busiest in today's world in the Azores archipelago. It's a stop for shipping vessels. There's yachts that come through there. There's actually some yachting regattas that happen there. And the shipping vessels fuel up. Sometimes they pick up additional crew supplies. What you see here in the marina is actually a natural museum almost that was created by visiting sailors over the years, painting about what they saw, painting wishes, prayers, showing their nationality, where their ships come from. So the whole Horta Marina is decorated with this kind of mural, this natural museum. If you look in the distance there, you see that mountain. That's actually no longer Fayal. That's Pico Island. It is the ferry between Fayal Island and Pico Island. It takes about 25 minutes, and it is the only ferry in the Azores that operates year round. It operates in the low season 3 times a day and the high season 6 times a day. Pico Island is relatively deserted in terms of tourism. However, it's a really neat place to visit for a day using the ferries going over there. Pico Mountain, which you see in the background here, is considered the highest peak in Portugal, even though it's not on the mainland. There are a lot of people that go to Pico to hike to the top. You do need a permit. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to get to the top and back. And the reason why you need a permit is actually because the trails, as you get towards the top, become really rugged, not as beaten out. You have to climb over rocks. And sometimes if the clouds come in, which you can kind of see in this picture, it gets really foggy and cloudy at the top and people lose their ways. So you need a permit so that they can track that you've gone up and come back down. Pico has a really good cheese factory that you can visit if you're over there for the day. It has a vineyard that produces some famous white wine, as the island has really lava-rich soil. But as I said, very little development for tourism. It's a great place if you want to go on a yoga retreat, or maybe if you're writing a book, as there's more nature than there are people. The other thing.
Oh, sorry, Erica.
No, go ahead.
Can you talk about how you get between the islands?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll just finish up on Pico and then I'll discuss that a little bit.
Thanks.
Because the thing to know about Pico, if you do decide to visit and you're not just doing a day trip, it's best to rent a car as there's no easy way to get around the island. It is one of the islands where there are no automatic car rentals. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that on some of the other major islands, there are automatics. They are limited, especially in high season, but Pico Island has no automatic car rentals. Like I said, and to Nancy's point, this is the only ferry that runs year round. It's a short ferry. At one point, they say Pico and Fayal Island were probably one island together. And as the world has moved, they've separated. And so there's a strait between them. Of the other islands in high season, there are a couple ferries that operate. They are all slow ferries. So going throughout the Western group, you're looking at a minimum of 2.5 to 6 hours. Most of the time, to get between islands, you're going to want to take flights. There are multiple flights a day between the main islands and one flight a day, and sometimes actually only 5 days a week going to some of the outer islands. The flight between, let's say, São Miguel and Terceira Island is about 35 minutes. So by the time you get up to cruising altitude, you're on your way back down. Going between São Miguel and Fayal Island, it's about 40 minutes. So everything is really easy to get around, and they're very kind of casual with the puddle jumpers around. Coming back to Fayal Island, if you're staying, we always tend to put you in the marina, as there's some really, really neat sailor life in the marina. But this is the place to discover the most recent volcanic activity in the archipelago. If you're interested in geology, volcanoes, this is a great place to visit, as this right here in this picture is considered a new crater. It's only about 65 years old. It's a popular hike to do, what they call descend into the crater. And as you go on the trails and you go closer to the bottom of the crater, the temperature heats up, one, because there's no wind, but two, because there still is some geothermal activity in the bottom of this caldera, even though it's not at the surface. You also see a lot of places on your hike down where you can see the different layers of the caldera as it's kind of grown up and then grown down, I guess is the way to put it. So you can also just visit it at the top here and stop by. It's really awe-inspiring because it's new in the grand scheme of the world. So that's kind of the end of the Azores part of this. Are there more questions for people before I move on to talk about Madeira?
I was wondering, Erica, how would late February be to visit, or would you recommend later in the spring? Because our family's going to go to Portugal over February vacation next year. So I'm just wondering if it makes any sense to go to the Azores.
Sure. You know, I always say that it depends on what you want to do and see and what's your reason for wanting to go here. It is a year-round destination. We send people there January, February, and it's about setting expectations. You're not going to have 80-degree island weather in February. You're probably going to have weather that's, you know, in the high 50s. There's always the possibility of rain, but it generally doesn't rain for days at a time. It generally rains for part of a day, and that's one of the reasons the islands are so green. And things are open. Everything's open. Tours hypothetically operate 365 days a year. They close on major Catholic holidays. They close on if the winds are really high or if the rains are torrential. But every other time it's open, and this is normal weather for them. It's more pleasant there in February than it is here. I'm in Boston, by the way.
Right.
Hey,
Thank
Erica, you. Another question, actually, two people asked about being vaccinated, if that's going to make a difference in the COVID rules for arriving and departing the Azores.
Sure. Currently, you have to get a negative PCR test whether you're vaccinated or not. It is part of being discussed as part of the rollout. I don't know if or when it will change. We're also waiting, you know, currently the CDC requires you to get tested prior to your return to the US. So I think as those rules change, the kind of Portuguese will react on that, because Portugal technically isn't open yet. You know, like I said, the opening of the Azores is kind of a soft opening because they're not opening kind of completely. You're really only open on those nonstop flights from Boston because they have a kind of control over who's getting on the plane in one airport going to one airport. There are testing facilities on all the islands for getting tested, and they are discussing having a vaccination passport, which a lot of the other countries in Europe are also discussing.
One thing you mentioned to me earlier today is that while testing here is pretty much free of charge, it's not there. Is that correct? That you
correct. So testing here is generally covered by your insurance or is a free clinic. Right now, testing there is a charge of 100 euros.
And what about going in between the different islands? Are you going to need to be tested if you go, you know, to Fayal? Is that how you say it?
Yep. Or? There's no testing requirements currently between the islands. However, if you're traveling and you get there and you land on São Miguel and you have your COVID test from, you know, when you left the United States, and then you go on to Terceira Island, on that 6th day of your trip, if you're not leaving on day 7, on day 6, you have to get tested per Azorean government rules. If you're staying for longer than that, on day 12, you'll also be required to get testing. When you fill out the health form, the government health form, which they require for you to board the plane in Boston, you'll have to enter in your itinerary, and so that they'll know where you'll be. And actually they will contact you to make sure that you are getting tested on the days that you need to get tested. So they're relatively organized. And they've been organized since the beginning. I was so impressed because I was really nervous working with such a small destination that has, you know, in so many ways is behind the times, just how quickly they came out with a COVID plan. They actually have modern hospitals there, and they've really been tracking what's been going on to try to stay on top of everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Erica?
Yes.
I had 2 questions. If I wanted to camp, are there facilities on the island where I could show up and rent equipment as opposed to bringing it all? That's one. And my other question is, just out of curiosity, is the cheese cow or sheep? The popular cheeses you were showing us?
Sure. Most of the cheese is cow. They do have some goats on the island that they do some stuff work with, as well as sheep. But most of it is cow. And as for camping, there's not a lot of camping facilities because there's so many environmental restrictions on the island for building, for development. They don't have a lot of camping places. It is possible, and we'd probably have to do that alongside some sort of group or some sort of activity center there. They do have some kind of glamping experiences. Specifically actually on the island of Terceira, they have little huts that were built into the banana plantation that are pretty primitive, and you get right up close with nature. It's like being in a tent, but you have a wooden roof over you. But that is a place where, you know, it's not quite camping because it is developed and there is technically an outdoor bathroom, but it is not as fancy as even a B&B.
And I will say that the different properties that we visited, you know, there is a range of medium to mid to higher price properties, but there's not your typical chains, and overall it's a very reasonable place to stay, to sleep. I mean, the accommodations are quite reasonable. Am I correct, Erica?
You are, and I'll show you a couple of pictures and talk about that because I want to talk about the comparisons between the 2 islands, and that's one of the places that differs. So if you pause for a minute, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So I'm going to move on to Madeira. So kind of forming a triangle here, we go 2.5 hours to the southeast. We're changing time zones. There's actually a time zone change between the Azores and Madeira. Madeira is on Lisbon time. You'll find the Madeira archipelago. It's 650 miles from Ponta Delgada, and it's 600 miles both from Lisbon and from the coastline of Morocco. So it's kind of like a little triangle in there. There are 4 islands in the archipelago, Madeira being the biggest and most popular. Porto Santo is right along the coast, right along to the east, excuse me, of Madeira, long sandy beaches, and it's actually considered a vacation spot for the Madeira mainland people. And then the other two islands belong to the Desertus group, and they're uninhabited. They can be visited by boat. Again, a great place for nature lovers and for bird lovers because they are uninhabited.
Are there trails there too, or
they're small. So the Desertus Islands, if you're going to take a boat trip out there, it's a boat trip. You have usually like an hour or two to explore the island. There are some trails, but it's primitive, but beautiful if that's what you want to do. Porto Santo, which is the island that has the beaches, actually has some really great sand dunes, which are fun if you want to like rent a buggy and go along the sand dunes, beaches, and also some great hiking trails that go through some of those natural uninhabited flat plains.
But there are a handful of folks on this call that are kayakers. Is that something you can do in Madeira as well, or is that more?
There is some sea kayaking in Madeira. Kayaking is actually going to be more popular in the Azores than it is in Madeira. But every activity, as I try to say, is available on both these islands. These both are for active travelers. Whether, hiking is probably the predominant activity in both destinations, but you can go canyoning, rappelling, paragliding, sea kayaking, biking, swimming, boating. These are active destinations if you want them to be. Again, they're also retirement zones for the Portuguese, so they're also very relaxing destinations.
And how about accessibility? Or were you going to talk about that later?
I'm gonna hold on, talk about that when we talk about accommodations.
Okay, sounds good.
So the capital city of Madeira is Funchal, where you'll also find the island's only international airport. There are no direct flights from the US going into Madeira, but there are multiple flights a day from Lisbon, and there's actually one flight a day coming from the Azores, so you can combine the two island groups. Similar to the Azores, Funchal is known for its whitewashed houses, basalt, volcanic rock, and then ceramic roofs, which you can see in these pictures. The city has a lot of different European and Mediterranean influences now because of its proximity to Morocco. It's got just a little bit different flair than in the Azores. What's neat and what's a really popular activity when you're visiting Funchal is to visit the town above the town, which is the parish of Monte. Monte was originally settled by the wealthier population. As they got a little bit higher above the town of Funchal, the weather became a little bit more mild than at sea level. There's a beautiful old manor house up in Monte surrounded by the botanical gardens that you can walk through. And the reason to go is that there's a gondola that goes up the 2,000 feet from the old town of Funchal to the parish of Monte. Then even better, you get to experience the traditional, original public transportation on the way back down, which is the toboggan rides. You see on the bottom left here, you get into these wicker baskets, almost wicker, and you run down. They have traditional guides, Madeiran population, that basically run you down the mountain. They have special shoes on that have reinforced rubber, and so that they can control a little bit better. And there are some windy passages of this, so you're going down much faster than you think you should be in a wicker basket, and then they turn. It's a roller coaster ride like you've never experienced before that is both thrilling, but also not as, you're not high up, you're at ground level. So this is the not to be missed experience and the destination that you can't find anywhere else in the world. Also like the Azores, this is the outdoor lover. Hiking, walking, there are a lot of walks that go through the dramatic lava form terrain, high peaks to look out. Many of them you can drive to, many of them you have to hike to. On the bottom left, you see kind of the trail that goes along the waterfall there and under the cave. These are along the Madeira levadas, which are channels built for water distribution around the island. So Madeira is known for its levada walks, which go along these channels, often ending in waterfalls. Lots of green around them. This isn't one of the greener walks, but just lots of greenery. And these are casual walks. So you don't need to be super fit to take these strolls along the levadas. The probably most popular lookout point in Madeira, you can see in this center picture, which is the Cabo Girao. It's a glass floored skywalk. It's about 2,000 feet above sea level. If any of you have ever gone to the Grand Canyon or heard of the glass walk in the Grand Canyon, this is really similar, only with far less people. But you know, you get the most extraordinary view of the coastline. In the background there, you do see Funchal town, and it's really a nice place to visit. So I like these slides because they show some of the diverse kind of lookout points that you can get to. Another island for the foodies. I'm sure many of you have heard of Madeira wine, often used in cooking, but it's also great as a higher end drink, aperitif or digestif. The fortified wine of Madeira dates back to the 15th century, and they've only been perfecting the process since then, excuse me. So while Madeira wine here in the US is often more used in cooking because of its unique flavor, over there, they drink it all the time. And there are a lot more varietals because there's a lot of different cellars that are producing different types of Madeira wine. You can visit these cellars and get tours and kind of learn a little bit more how they develop the product. And then for food, one of Madeira's most popular dishes is called the espadade, which you see being cooked on the left and served on the right. It is morsels of beef rubbed with garlic and salt and then skewered onto a bay laurel branch cooked over hot coals. The bay laurel branch will add seasoning to the beef, kind of akin to herby taste of oregano or thyme. Very, very popular dish cooked in the Azores. Madeira, sorry, wrong place. Okay, so now I'm going to actually revert back and talk about accommodations because this is really what differentiates these two islands. And I think this is really important when you think about where you want to go and what you want to see and what kind of traveler you are. Looking back at the Azores, and I specifically want to show you the top left here, there are a ton of boutique properties in the Azores. Quaint accommodations. Many properties are built into pre-existing buildings. One has a library that used to be a wine cellar. The exterior is a manor house. There's a lot of variety of accommodations, whether you're staying in the old town, down in the marina, up on a remote cliff, or nestled into one of the little towns along the coast. As Nancy pointed out, Azores is all about boutique. The largest hotel in the Azores has about 250 rooms, which is small. And there's no name brands. If you're going to the Azores, you're not going to find a Sheraton, a Marriott, a Hyatt. They don't have those. They've been really, really restrictive about new build properties in the Azores because of all of the nature and developmental rules. It's been hard for those name brand hotels to come in and create a new build hotel. So we like to say that luxury in the Azores is celebrated in a slightly different way. Maybe peaceful, relaxing escapes, ocean views, sometimes a hammock on the porch. It's not quite that amenity-filled Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons style. So compared to mainland Portugal, there are a few five-star accommodations on the island, but they're rated by Azorean standards. So they're not up to the same standards that you would get based on mainland Portugal. And as we talk about accessibility, the Azores are not a great place if you have people who have mobility problems. And the reason for this is that they haven't kind of adapted to some of the modern standards for accessibility. There are often 1 or 2 or 3 steps that lead into a hotel. Most of the hotels that have multiple levels do have elevators. Some of the ones like the one on the left there that only has 2 levels, it's a stair. It's only 1 staircase, but for people that can't do 1 staircase, it becomes more difficult. The vans that we use in the Azores, they do require a step up to get into the vans. This is just important to think about as you're touring around. You know, a lot of the vistas that we go to in the Azores, you do have to walk up a little bit to get to these great lookout points. So I have to say that accessibility in the Azores is a little bit difficult. On the flip side of that, Madeira, The Germans and the British have known about Madeira for a while. While it's still newer to the American population, it's definitely a little bit more of a hotspot with the European population. While the greatest percentage of tourists visiting Madeira are from mainland Portugal, this is how cool it is that Portuguese want to go to Madeira, you do find the larger and fancier accommodations. For those of you that like top of the line, there is a New Belmont luxury hotel, there's a Savoy, there is a Hilton, a lot of the name brands that you know you'll find in Madeira. Hotels are more modern, they're built with a little bit more accessibility in mind, but you can find smaller boutique hotels in Madeira located in the Old Town, located cliffside or oceanside. So you could have kind of the best of both worlds. Any questions about any of that?
I have a question. Is that bottom left, is that the Pestana?
That's your hotel. Yep.
So I could tell them this little tale when we arrived in San Miguel. We were late. It was an airline issue, but it didn't really affect us too much. But when we got to our hotel right downtown, they were having a problem with the hot water. And so I was on with Erica and also the manager of that property. And it took a while, but we weren't too worried.
I think they served you some wine and you forgot all about it.
Oh yeah, there was a bar on the side. We were drinking wine, cheese, of course, and walking around, taking turns, waiting to hear. And finally, they found us a couple rooms at this resort just out of town. I think it's about 10 or 15 miles. I don't know, maybe not even that
no,
far.
you're right.
And yeah, that's it on the bottom left. And it's adjacent to probably one of the only sand beaches in that area. So after we got back from one of our day's adventures, we walked the beach, and there was a little mom and pop restaurant down on the beach that we had a wonderful meal. Again,
in the Azores, there are technically 3 hotels, and only 3 that are considered built on a beach. All beaches are public, so it's not its own beach. And the Pestana in that picture is one of them, but it is built to the side, and then the beach is down, down to the side of the hotel, because they can't actually be built on the beach per the environmental laws.
It was just lovely, and we spent a lot of time in town anyway, but it was nice to have this oasis for, breakfast and when we got back at the end of their day's adventure. So no, it was great.
So that's pretty much.
If I could
Carol has a question.
Just wondering about, the evenings, if they tend to have some entertainment or music in the hotels, or when people have hiked all day and they've had a nice meal, is there anything that goes on of an evening, or is it shut down pretty early?
So in the Azores, actually kind of in both towns, the Azores, Punta Delgada to Angra de Turismo, or if you're in Madeira and Funchal, the hotels themselves, because of their size, won't generally have activities. But when we put you in hotels, we like to try to keep you centrally located so that you can walk out, try the different restaurants. Many of the restaurants will have music and local music in the evening. The Azores are not a place if you want to go night clubbing. There are a couple clubs on Madeira Island, but there's often local music being played in the various restaurants. I will say that currently, due to the current restrictions, they're not actually allowed to have music because they don't want to encourage gathering of people. So that is temporarily on pause, but that's where I would recommend to go, especially in the old town of Punta Delgada, where you have kind of restaurants and little bars scattered around. You will hear music coming out of all of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Did you have, I saw that little hand pop up.
Right. On the previous slide, I just wanted to ask, were those all places in the Azores, or you were trying to make a distinction and I think I missed?
That's okay. So the top left is one of the very typical boutique hotels in the Azores in Punta Delgada town. Bottom left would be one of the ocean and beachfront hotels, specifically the one that Nancy was moved to. Top right is also the Azores. It's in the marina. It's actually one of the fancier hotels in the marina. And those are 2 hotels, and those are the 2 biggest hotels on the island. Like I said, one has about 200 rooms, the other has 250. So that's the biggest size that you see right now. People love them though, because they're right in the marina. You get ocean views from your balcony.
So all of these pictures are accommodations in the Azores?
Nope. The bottom right is the Belmont Hotel, is the 5-star over the top super fancy hotel in Madeira. And then actually the center image is from one of the more, interestingly enough, I couldn't find a good picture of the front of the hotel, but it's one of the more boutique hotels that we use in Funchal City. What I like about this picture though, is that they do have a rooftop pool. So they try to make it a little more intimate, but you see the whole city around it. And it's bigger. It's just Funchal's more developed, it's bigger. But they really do try to put in both destinations, and definitely this applies to Madeira where things are a little bit more developed. They really try to put their own flair on things. They really try to show you that they're proud. Similar to the Azorians, Madeirans will tell you that they're from Madeira first and they're Portuguese second. They're very, very proud people, and they really want to show you what they have to offer.
And you had said with the Azores, you wouldn't want to go bar hopping. Is that a safety issue?
No, it's just that it's, so I'll rephrase that depending on what your idea of bar hopping is. Punta Delgada and Angra, which are the 2 main towns, and actually even some of the other larger towns, bar hopping can be really fun. If your idea of a bar is a really small, more pub style, outdoor seating, you can have a drink in each one of them and hear the different music. And actually the foodie that we paired with in the Azores that Nancy went on the market tour with has an evening tour where they take you to 3 or 4 of their favorite quote bars, and you do one of the local drinks and a little bite of the local food. It does attract a slightly younger crowd, but it's not meant to be a party bar hopper. It's meant to be a cultural bar hopper. I would say I have 0 safety concerns about going to the Azores.
Okay, that's more of what I was getting at, not so much the bar hopping.
We send a lot of families, multi-generational families. And actually my colleague went just recently with his relative. He went before everything shut down. He has 2 kids, 9 and 7. And they just loved it because, they'd be like, oh, remember that restaurant where we booked the reservation? Yeah, you guys can go there and meet us. And it was maybe 2 blocks away, but they could run out the front door of the hotel, run down the street. And once they got the layout of the street, no big deal. What's also actually, since we talk about safety, the Azores and Punta Delgada town specifically has a really great New Year's Eve celebration where they literally have a party in the street. Music, dancing, bands will be playing, and people are outside. I mean, the temperature, depending on, what's going on, it could be as low as 40 degrees, but it still allows people to be outside in the street celebrating. It's a cultural event. It's the new year. Madeira has also a huge New Year's Eve celebration that takes place in downtown Funchal and is really fun to attend. It's just taken to the next level because Madeira is bigger, Funchal is bigger. Still, I really don't have safety concerns there either. If you look at crime rates coming out of both destinations, they're next to none. Madeira is probably 0.5% up from where the Azores are. So on our website, if you go and look, there's a bunch of different tours. And I just want to point out that the tours on the website are kind of sample itineraries. Nancy can book them for you exactly as they are. What we did with Nancy's group was kind of customized because she said, oh, we want to go walking one day and we want to go whale watching one day. So nothing's set in stone. Nancy happened to go with her and a couple friends. So it was a small group that we put together, but we also have clients that just go as a couple. And what we do on the day tours is we'll put you with a small group. So there'll be a couple other people, but you're not with the same people every day. Because if you choose to go hiking one day and then you choose to go to the pineapple plantation the next day, you're not going to get the same people who want to do both those activities at the same time. So whether you're 1 person, 2 people, or 10 people, we can make this work for you. And so I do encourage you to just look at the different programs, look at the different activities, and then talk to Nancy about which ones appeal to you the most, and we can mix and match and put them all together.
Yeah, and what I wanted to share is that I'm really hopeful that maybe we'll have a small group going again soon. But I'm hesitant to pick dates and set up an itinerary, because I don't want it to. I don't want to be disappointed, or have you be disappointed that we have to reschedule, etc. So, but that said, I do organize small group departures, but also I work independently with any of you that want to go whenever you want to go. I can help, Erica and I can help set up an itinerary that suits your needs and your activity interests and levels. So contact me first to set it up, because I can also make sure we get the best rates on the flights and the insurance and pre and post. I will say that I've traveled a lot of places around the world, and Lisbon is one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. And so I'm eager to travel again, but I would like to combine this small group adventure with Lisbon. And I had someone chat privately to me about maybe combining it with that June 24th festival in Terceira. So maybe we'll look ahead to 2022 for that. But in the meantime, you are definitely welcome to reach out to me, and Erica and I will work together to set up an itinerary that suits you and your family and friends.
Yeah, we do have people traveling to the Azores in 2 weeks, people who were just ready to get on an airplane and go. And, you know, they're kind of, for us specifically, Quest Travel, they're somewhat of our guinea pigs. They're the first people that have decided to go out, but I talk almost every day with Azores Airlines and get their reports. And they say that, you know, they've easily been, as long as people follow the rules of getting tested and filling out the health form, there's no problem with getting on the plane or disembarking in the Azores. So it's very exciting for me. You know, it's probably like some of the best news I've heard in the, excuse me, in a year now. So I'm excited to share this destination. I think both Madeira and the Azores, while very different and similar in capacities, speak for themselves once you get there. They sell themselves. I can tell you all about it. You saw the pictures that I put here, but when you get there, you'll feel it. You'll see it for yourself, and you'll be like, haha, yes. So,
quick question.
Yep.
Will you be doing anything like this for the Spanish Canary Islands? Because I've always been fascinated by them.
Nancy, looks like we need to put another date on the books.
I know, that was, we just decided to do the Azores and add Madeira as a side note on this particular presentation, but Erica has a specialty in the Canary Islands as well. So thanks, Fran. I think we'll add that one.
So starting with the Portugal's Atlantic Islands is because they're open right now. Right. Right now, Spain itself is closed to U.S. tourists, and Canary Islands are following suit with that. They haven't broken apart, even though there's very few cases on a majority of the islands, with the exception of the main island, which relative to its population has a spike, but relative to our population is still nothing. So we anticipate right now, the way that things look, Spain is hoping to be open by June 1st. Who knows what's going to happen, and who knows what the EU is going to come out with and what rules and regulations are going to happen. So it's really anybody's guess, but I'm proud to present the Portuguese Islands because I can send you there right now, but I'm happy to work with Nancy and do another presentation.
Well, I'll say that the other presentations that we've done over the last few months are to places we can't travel to yet. So that's okay. We are loading up the I don't know, backlog, I guess you'd say, so that when we can go, and like I said in my recent newsletter, when this dam lets us go, there's gonna be a lot of pent up requests for
Yeah.
tours. And again, I can help you with your own ideas. I have my own ideas, and I'm happy to work together with you for that. So,
Sounds great.
yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, we're actually going on the 17th of April through the 30th. And what should we expect weather-wise? Do we need really heavy foot gear, and what's the electricity?
Sure. So weather-wise, for the end of April, you're going to see temperatures during the day in the high 60s. Possibly, if there's a lot of sunshine, it'll get up to the 70s. A lot of sun. Bring your sunscreen. It is sunny all the time. There is a chance of rain. I like to say every day. So I always recommend a windbreaker or a rain slicker just in case. It doesn't usually rain for the whole day, but you never want to be unprepared. If you're not doing hiking trips, I don't think you need heavy gear. In the Azores, a lot of the streets, especially in the old town, are cobblestone. So leave your heels at home. It is not a fancy destination. So while people will put on a nicer shirt when they go out in the evening, you don't need your like sparkle dresses or ties or even coats. Some people do wear, some men will wear like a golf thing with a collar and then a sports coat over it, but it's not fancy. In terms of kind of getting around, you will notice that there are a lot less people there. It does have a somewhat deserted feel right now because of tourism and because of tourism just starting again, which ultimately might be a little lucky because you'll get to see a little bit more. You won't have anybody around you. The guides will be really excited to be with you. And you'll just again, following the protocols, I'm sure your group will be provided with the Azores Safe health card that you have to fill out beforehand, and that will be taking care of you. Did I answer all the questions there?
Yeah, the electric.
The electricity, sure. Electricity is that of Southern Europe. So it's the two round prongs in Southern Europe. And I can actually get you more of that information and some pictures in case you want to go to the store and buy it. Azores specifically does have a couple of the hotels have tried to install double plugs for the American market or USB plugs for your cell phone. Not all of them do because, again, visiting the Azores is like visiting Europe 25 years ago. Like nothing is quite updated to where you want it to be, which is part of the joy of visiting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Erica, you include all that with your travel documents, correct?
Yeah, we do. We include an FAQ that talks about currency, that talks about electricity, that talks about weather, that talks about packing, and if you find a question that's not on there, please tell me and I'll add it. I'm happy to send that FAQ to Nancy so that she can distribute it if you want to take a look at it, just to kind of have that in front of you. But yeah, our travel documents will have an itinerary for your departure as well as kind of FAQ, everything you need to know. And we have a new COVID document that'll be going in as well so that people are updated with what they need to provide and do.
Yeah, and they will be on one of your groups.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Yes.
In terms of flights, I'm assuming it's direct to the Azores because it's just water between us and them.
Yeah.
But where do you leave from? Is it Boston or New York? Or
currently it's Boston to San Miguel Island. They're doing 3 days a week. Boston to Terceira Island 1 day a week. It's the same plane, so it's on different days.
And where's Terceira Island?
Terceira is the second island that I talked about with the UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Those are in the
both
Azores.
In the Azores. Yes, there's no direct flight to Madeira.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
how long is the flight? Like 6 hours?
It's actually 4.5 going over and 5.5 coming back.
Time change?
Is 5 hours. So you leave here at 9:30 at night and you get there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So is there a different time zone? No.
It takes longer on the way back because of the jet stream.
Yeah. So the time change is 5 hours. 5 hours. They're on like London time.
Okay.
So any other questions that you guys have, if you think of them, just email Nancy and I can give her whatever information you're looking for. I'm happy to make sure that you're very well versed in where you're going.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. And I just want to thank Erica and thank everyone that signed on tonight. This has also been recorded, and I will make sure that you receive a copy of that to share with other people that you know that didn't make it tonight or might be interested. Yeah, we're going to be ready when we can go. Right, Erica?
I am ready to go right now. If so, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm very excited to be sending people there, and I'll probably be on a plane myself at some point in the next month or two.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again,
Thank
everyone.
you, guys.